Edmund Mcmillen, most known for The Binding of Isaac, has created 55 games throughout his career. Ignore the fact that like 6 of them are DLCs. From 2001 all the way up to 2021, which was his last release, unless Mugenics came out, then it's not. I first played one of his games all the way in January of last year, and I really enjoyed it. And I met a few friends who also really enjoyed it and liked all of Edmund's other stuff. So I decided I would play all of his stuff. Now, a few notes before we start. For any games that cover DLC, I'll mainly talk about the content included in the specific versions with and without the DLC. So for example, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, I'll be playing on the Repentence patch, but I'll mainly be focusing on the characters and bosses added in that specific game. For Flash games that have a version in the Basement Collection, I will be playing the Basement Collection version because I paid for that version. Also, some games I'll have to skip myself because I don't think I'll be able to handle a dead child getting dissected, so sorry if your favorite one is 8 more uses for dead babies, you sick freak. So my friend Valvecap, who has witnessed these atrocities, will cover for me. As in, they'll provide their opinion and I'll say it. So now, let's get started with... Okay, so technically a lot of these early ones aren't really games and more just a Flash interactive experience thing, but it's on the Wikipedia article, which is the basis for what I'm considering, so it counts. This is more of a bunch of short stories based on this psychotic guy's life, and I hate this. I hate this so much. Like, oh my god. But I was oddly intrigued by it. Seemed like this would have been an interesting character study of one of the strangest, most deranged person on Earth. I thought it would have had an ending or something, but I didn't do the last one, because it rhymed with the planet Uranus. Then afterwards I realized, oh yeah, this guy has a really weird sense of humor. So this was probably meant to be funny. If you base it like that, then it's more just gross and horrible, and only the first one I found kind of funny. You may see I haven't really talked about how it works, but as you've most likely seen, it's just text. Quite often the buttons to put up the text act weirdly and not as they're meant to. It's strange. Okay, I'm crossing my spoilers because a lot of these early Flash games and even some of the later ones aren't really going to be that deep. I'm pretty sure a lot of these aren't really games. So let's move on to... The Lonely Hermit is a glorified PDF of The Lonely Hermit by Edmund Mcmillen. Yeah, no, I didn't receive the Wait. I mean, I didn't get a link to the very legal Flash version of this game. I just got a link to the source, I mean the link to the original story. It's about a lonely hermit who wants a friend. It's fine. Look, what more am I meant to say? It's quite literally a children's book that's not meant for children. How am I meant to go into deep analytical deep dive on it? Thank God it's not in color at some points, because this already makes me feel a bit icky, which is a very great sign for later. It's really weird, and the man I don't have any clue. Actual games, well, but oh god, no. Yeah, this is like the worst of the worst. I cannot handle the worst of the worst because I am a small little baby. Because Valvecap is deranged. They've played all of these, and I will read out what they have to say. Help me, Gammaseer is wrong page. This is for play their writing. Okay, so the actual script. Dead baby dress-ups. There's not much really to be said here. All the games are mostly is just your generic dress-up Flash game you would find with some shock value in the mix. Some of the better ones are the dress-ups that don't really rely on shock value, such as the superhero one, the video game one, and even the WWF one, probably because they are more normal ones. The uses of dead babies don't really class as games, to be honest. Sure, they can be interactive sometimes, but usually it's just a gruesome Flash animation with some super over-the-top sounds, which are pretty funny admittedly. But yeah, not a whole lot going on here. And Style Man Dress Up is a basically more edgy Dead Baby Dress Up, but with a Style Man. This is the only other game from 2001, 2002. Oh god, why is there so many Dead Baby games? I have left which I can cover. And it's another interactive story, god damn it. This one's actually pretty good though. aside from the stuff to do with seeing his butt that wasn't appreciated. It's about a boy who questions everything and tries to prove things wrong and has some funny moments, especially compared to The Lonely Hermit, which just existing. The ending where he's given one more chance not to go to hell and he calls him the country of Niger, which, oh god, was probably meant to be the racist word. Dude, what the hell? I get this guy's meant to be deranged, but what the hell? God, if you weren't canonically gay when you played The Binding of Isaac, I would not continue this, cause Christ. I'm honestly shocked by how quality the Carious Welting game is. Like, it's actually a game. That's kind of crazy considering what I've been dealing with weren't really games. Carious Welting is a survival shooter thing where you shoot enemies for a score and eat food to sustain your blood count, which slowly depletes as you rack up score. This game's actually quite fun and very high quality for a Flash game, especially so early on in internet terms. Either that or I'm a moron. I can honestly see this being a basic game jam game nowadays, and a game jam games can get pretty dang good. The animation is fluid and expressive, and it's overall a good time. There are two main modes, normal and survival. Normal is just trying to rack up as much score as possible over an increasingly more difficult stages, and survival is just survive and is much harder as it seems to start on the very late stage. Overall, it's well designed aside from one enemy, the cactus. The cactus is an enemy which dashes from one side of the screen to another, trying to kill you and you're welting. It is the most annoying enemy. It's an instant kill, and often I find the hitbox to be a bit off. It feels like I should hit it, but I don't. It creates a large difficulty spike. At the very least, it gives you a laser until your blood runs out, which is nice, but I'm still not a fan. Especially when he spawns right where you are. If I was younger and had nothing to do and this popped up on a site like Cool Math Games and was actually appropriate for little children, I could see myself playing this a lot more. Apparently Snackerland's Edmund's worst game according to the man, the myth, the legend, Edmund Mcmillen. Honestly, I think these games are worse, but yeah, this game is very nothing. You hop along and try to eat as many people as you can. Initially, because I don't read, I thought this game was bugged, and it turns out you just can squash people for some reason. Yeah, there aren't really any obstacles or anything to make it hard, it's... yeah, nothing. Now, TripTech is the first PC game he helped develop at Chronic Logic. This sucks. It's a physics-based Tetris-like where you have to collide 3 blocks together to get rid of them. Simple enough, right? The issue is with the physics which bleed into the controls. You use the arrow keys to move the blocks with the A and D rotating them. Simple enough, it should work in theory. The issue is that it doesn't really. I find whenever I try to rotate the blocks, the turning speed is inconsistent, which may have to do with the blocks being in the way, which, yeah, it probably is, but I feel the power of the blocks you're controlling should be stronger than the other blocks, but it just isn't. The physics also feel terrible due to how weightless everything is. Everything feels like it has moon physics, which I feel is inappropriate for this type of game. Just makes everything you do feel like it has zero impact aside from the zzz sound, and even then it doesn't add that much to the impact. I'm not going to lie, I can't think of any positives with this game at all. The art is gross, and worst of all, the full version is no longer available and I can only play the demo. Wait, I can't throw out a file, god damn it. So apparently Chronic Logic's website is still up, but I wouldn't trust it due to it still looking like it came out of the 2000s. Word Peace is the demo version. Again, due to how these guys distributed their game, it makes it practically impossible to play these days. What advice? Don't be Chronic Logic and make online functionality integral to playing your game. Oh, why are we in a time like that? Word Peace was ahead of its time. Oh god. This is essentially a mobile game with how it's one of those word spelling type games. However, it's pretty good. You basically just have to get a high score by making the most words on this little hexagon with a Scrabble letter scoring system. And while it's not something I would come back to much, the little bit I played was actually pretty decent. I could see getting a couple hours out of this if it was the full game, but unfortunately you only have access to a small board, which makes the game overall underwhelming. I sort of wish I could have had more, as a large board would have made this so much fun. I guess God isn't real. Okay, maybe it is. God, I feel bad for this guy because I started out being more positive and now I'm dissing his games. Yeah, Clubby the Seer wasn't that good. It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up with Clubby who's freaking adorable. Look at their work cycle! If one thing is consistent about these games, is the fact that aside from those, they are animated very well and the art is very good and charming. The main problem I have is with the combat and personally not finding it very fun. You can essentially whack these things with your club and they can hit you back. It's just kind of uninteresting. It's also extremely hard for some reason, which is my excuse for being bad. It's just frustrating that the hitbox doesn't work sometimes, especially if the enemies are right up next to you or in you. It just makes killing them a pain. This game was also the only Flash game released in 2004, whereas every other year had at least 3. This is because Edmund was working on a much bigger game project at the time as a designer, and that game would be... And bro must have been tight afterwards because it released in May. Gish was made due to Edmund wanting to use triptychs physics on another game. Uh-oh. Let's hope for my sanity that they improve them because god they were bad. Gish is a puzzle platformer starring everyone's favorite bull of tar, Gish. His lady friend, that's what they call her, gets kidnapped into the sewer and Gish goes down to save her. Pretty basic plot, but it works. Now the controls. Like they work. 50% of the time. You can move left, right, jump, harden, I think that's what's happening here, and stick. The jump is very strange. It's pitiful when you jump, but the more squash you get by landing, the higher you can jump. This isn't a terrible idea in theory, but initially the jump height being practically non-existent ruins it a tad. The heights you can reach are pretty satisfying though. The biggest flaw of jumping is when you try to jump off any hanging platforms. The jump just seems to not work really at all. Level 2 falls suffers from this significantly. This little jump took me 5 years to get somewhat consistent, minus 4 years, 51 weeks, 6 days and 23 hours. It didn't help that it didn't seem like my fault and just felt like the game wasn't really working. Stick is a bit odd. Sometimes it decides to not work. I've had multiple times where it would just not change surface or move up slopes or just fall off because the stick would decide nope. You also have harden, which feels mostly useless. You become a rock and plummet downwards a lot harder. Shape also stays consistent with this form whenever you use it, or at least tries to be. Obviously it won't be if you're in a scenario where it's impossible to create the shape without clipping in a wall. It can be used to crush enemies in combat, and don't get me started on the combat. It took nearly the entire game to properly figure out how the combat is meant to work. So stick is your main way to kill enemies, but it's so inconsistent in when it killed the enemy to the point where I had little idea on how I was properly meant to do it. I sort of just jumped around until I did. Now you may say I just crush your enemies, but you need a bit of height and speed, making it unviable in a lot of situations, especially if you're in a very enclosed space, since you need around 3 or 4 blocks of dropping distance, I think, before it actually becomes effective. This became extremely annoying extremely quickly. The fact I couldn't kill many enemies mean I had to run past most, which works for the most part, but then I got to the first boss, these poop guys. They were not fun because they decided death isn't very fun, which made me still pretty clueless on how the combat system works. It took me way too long to finally figure that you have to jump against the ground, ignore why the footage is in 4:3, it's not, to kill them. The issue is that it's still inconsistent. Afterwards, you have to be right on top of the enemy. You can't be diagonally on top, which may cause some issues, like maybe the fact that the enemies can still hurt you when you're on top of them. It's harder for them to do it, but it still does happen sometimes, which is a tad annoying. The level design for the most part's okay. A lot of the time it's not very annoying and pretty manageable until 3.5. This level was a pain due to the jump not really liking moving platforms. Made it hard to time the jump onto the next platform and was quite a struggle out. Outside of this, yeah, the level design was fine, which brings me to my main issue. The game's unremarkable. While I have mostly complained about it because of how I forced myself through it, it's very much a 5 out of 10. It's not bad, but it's not really good. It keeps you occupied, but for me at least, I wasn't having much fun. Due to me pushing to beat the game, it made it quite frustrating because I didn't really want to continue it. The only reason I did is so I could give it a full-on critique. So trust me when I say this game quite literally would not let me progress past 4-3. I'm sorry, what did I do? Gish's fat cranium will not go through this gap no matter how hard I tried. One thing I didn't mention earlier intentionally was the slide, which makes Gish a lot more slippery and able to go down these chasms. For some reason, removing these little funnels that usually precede these holes just completely removes the ability to go down them. At this point, I learned that this was an anniversary update physics and the old one is better. Great! Not gonna lie, I wasn't as miffed as I might have sounded, but I don't think I'm emoting. I'm definitely exaggerating a decent bit of this anger so far, as I usually do in general. This was slightly annoying, but it's good to know that by going into the properties and going to beta 701, wait, 107, that number, I could make the game better and be the game. I was somewhat optimistic. I made a mistake by being somewhat optimistic. The old physics are worse? I can't describe many differences, so I'll try my best. Firstly, the jump. Satisfaction on the jump height feels near non-existent now unless you're falling fast but compressing fast. It feels more consistent though, interestingly enough. It might have been because I've done it so much, but for a lot of sections that I found more difficult weren't as difficult, except for a level in World 3 I can't remember. This level though, it was complete agony. This one level old physics was genuinely the most frustrated I've been in a video game for a good while. So the first part of the level where you have these pillars which you have to get past, and quite often, the second pillar would have to require you to painstakingly pull it out of the spot it gets stuck in, which happened most times to me to actually get past. Secondly, after you get past the enemies, you have to push this sideways pillar to hit this lever. Easy, right? I'm mentioning it, so obviously not. I could not for the life of me find a consistent way to push this pillar. Outside of once where it worked completely fine, it was an active struggle. It would take what felt like a few minutes to actually get it to push the lever. I generally don't know what I did in Anniversary, which is new physics, to make this actually work properly. Then the final main frustrating part is these cubes moving around the cave of spikes. This was the main thing which made my enjoyment of this game plummet. In this section where I died a lot because these physics are working against you, feels like a lot more in old compared to Anniversary. Feels like in nearly every case, aside from a weird bug you can do with the final boss, you have to fight it. I have to fight it not to accidentally grip into the spikes and die. I have to fight it to actually let go around the cube because it doesn't like it when you change from two perpendicular surfaces on the outside. One painfully annoying thing is how sometimes Gish would just smush and die for no reason on random objects. He just gets spindled, I guess would be the correct word. It's annoying. This is a massive issue which makes the game a lot worse for no reason. I did get past it eventually, and I got to the part of Word 4 where I got soft locked and I was able to get through. Still have to wiggle a lot to be able to actually get through, which isn't fun, especially when it feels like RNG if you'll actually get down the hole. The rest of the game after this point has simultaneously some of the best and most interesting level design, but also some of the most criminally insane level design inside the game. For example, this part where you have multiple of these little curve things was actually really cool, and I really enjoyed it. How you have to use Gish's moveset and combine multiple abilities and actually use the physics engines to create puzzles, unlike most levels where it just kind of exists. Then in the same level, there's also a pit with a million enemies. Yahoo! Overall, this is a 5 out of 10 game I forced myself painfully through. If it wasn't for this thing, I probably would have quit way earlier, but I persisted and feel like it sucked. This is one of the few times I acknowledge that the game's quality is higher than my actual experience. I like thinking of games in more how I did enjoy them. A game could theoretically be flawless, but it doesn't mean much if it's not very fun. This, before I had to do a lot of the game again, was 5 out of 10, and the old physics would have probably been the same, maybe a 4.5. It's just incredibly hard to tell due to the fact I didn't want to replay most of the game. I would only recommend the game if you got it as part of a Blue King bundle on Steam, as that is the only context where you should own this game nowadays, in my opinion. A relic of the past, but just not very good. God, I haven't played anything decent besides Curious Welting. Well, good thing in... the first game is... God damn it, Curious Welting 2 isn't as good. How the hell did you do it? Curious Welting 2 should be better than the original in theory. Unfortunately, it is not really. The main culprit is how slippery controlling the welting is. Before it felt like I stopped right when I let go of the arrow, and now it feels like he slides slightly before stopping. Now, since I changed to the Newgrounds Flash player because Ruffle decided not to work, God damn it. Hey, a hammer. As I was saying, it might be the Newgrounds Flash player, but am I gonna check it? No. This game being this type shooter really makes it so that tight controls are necessary, so then you can actually be a lot more precise and survive longer. Another thing I dislike about Wilting 2 is how the hitboxes felt too small with how you can eat the stuff. I felt often that where the welting mouth was, you should have been able to eat the food, but nope, I could not. The food does bounce though, which is nice. Finally, I have the insta-kill enemies which I encountered. These might not be all of them, but I have had enough to tell I'm not a fan. I played it more than Wilting 1 at least. Both the insta-kills here kinda suck a lot. Firstly, you have Spearman, who is tiny and in the background. He's practically a jump scare and unexpected when you first encounter him, because you're most likely looking at these guys up here and not the background down here, so he feels kind of unfair. Then you have what's essentially a faster cactus from before, which feels way harder to actually kill, which kind of sucks. Overall, play the first one, it's better and more balanced. God, I feel so mean for bashing these guys' games, considering the only one I found pretty good was Wilting 1 so far. Dress up game I can play. Nice. You dress up the little Wilting and are asked to find the 19 unique references. I found one. Okay, well maybe it's a good thing I gave all the dead baby games to Valvecap because this is very underwhelming. Surprised there isn't more variation. Viviparius Dumpling is the 4th game in the Carious Wilting universe, which makes me wonder why it isn't inside the basement collection. It seems to be a decently large mini-franchise Edmund created. I guess he believes it wasn't quality enough, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, this game is weird. So you're a dumpling, which are these round things you've been shooting and welting. You're one of those things, but a fetus. And you have to grow up and get as many points as possible for the most part. You have 4 modes. Story, which is basic high score mode, where you eat the most whatever these, and it's decent. I think you're meant to throw the little guy around to collect these things, but there's broken strategy called not moving your mouse fast, which sort of eliminates all challenge from this game. Your guy does grow bigger as the time progresses, which means it does get harder as you progress with dodging, which I think is a pretty neat way of showing it. It also shows you becoming close to being born and creates more of a challenge. You have duplication mode, which is just really easy. I feel like I survive until it's practically impossible to survive due to the fact that it's when all duplicates die, not just one of the duplicates, which I think would have been a far more interesting challenge. You have time survival mode, where it's your high score is tied to how long you can survive, which is fine. Again, it's just a tad easy. Finally, you have a mode where you try to create as many rebounds as possible, and it kinda sucks. The main thing I have to mention is the main theme is really good, oddly. Most of the music has been fine, but this one I remember being really good. Hey Valka, I need your thoughts on cerebral discharge. Thanks. So cerebral discharge is apparently just a sketchbook of Edmund's art. It's actually quite cool with how he designs stuff. There's a lot of cool creatures in here, though it features some nudity. It's actually quite a cool sketchbook, according to Valvecap. Blast Miner would be fun if the right person played it. It's a puzzle game where you have to blow gold to the exit, and the final PC game that Edmund developed for about 4 years. You have to figure out how to blast the gold to the exit in these levels. I personally did not have much fun with this game. It might have been because I upped the resolution so that I made the click detection really weird. I'd have to click slightly above or below the box I wanted depending on the position on the screen, which was a tad annoying. I'm also not the biggest fan of puzzle games either, so that probably affected my enjoyment a lot. I feel like I should be saying more about a lot of these, but due to how most of these are pretty short flash games with not much to them, or demos, which, yeah, don't have a lot to them, I can't really say much. Well, maybe the oldest game to make in the basement collection will have more to say about it. Tracknid is the first spoiler section, so feel free to plug your ears until I get to the next game. Tracknid is a 2D funky movement game where you play as Tracknid in a story I didn't really get. All I know is that you get in at some point and you need to transport a web egg sac or something, whatever this thing is. The movement works by you using the mouse to move 3 legs to navigate around the terrain, and honestly, I quite enjoyed it. I think it's fun to move around and attempt to scale the environment or complete puzzles. The movement, while not intuitive, works pretty well with how the game's designed. Now I have a few problems. One of them was me using right click to move the claws, which made me accidentally pick up and throw the egg ball a few times. Oops. My second legitimate complaint is wishing there was a way to move more traditionally, because the only game I can think of, Biped, allows you to move semi-normally in between puzzles and such, so then the core movement doesn't get annoying. Tractor doesn't have this, which I find somewhat annoying, mainly due to the last tutorial level, which leads me to my second criticism, which we'll get to in a second, having quite a few straight flat areas. Anyway, my second criticism is I wanted more non-tutorial levels. You only have 2 where there isn't a tutorial associated, which is a tad disappointing because I enjoyed this game quite a bit. I did want more, but I think at this point in history, either Flash games couldn't save or it was very difficult to do so, because you have to do the story all in one sitting. There's probably a limitation of Flash over time, which is unfortunate. I honestly would be intrigued to see a sequel or a spiritual successor by the guy, because I think it would be interesting to see all the stuff you can do now that you aren't in Flash. Dang, I generally thought I would have more to say. I don't think this game is complete and it's so strange. So you have more modes to look out for. Wow, it must be really good if it's taking 18 years to update. This game you can either pick Jesus or Santa and you have to destroy the other's snowman. Before you get into the game itself, holy crap, this is like 3D in Flash. This is very impressive. Unfortunately, there is no game. You practically just spam snowballs and move forward, and if you're lucky, you win. This genuinely might be the worst thing so far I've played. Never got finished, so I don't know if that's fair to say if it's the worst though. Cerebral Peachy is the final unique game in the Curious Welting universe, I think. I did not get far in this game. It's probably because I suck and found it unusually difficult. I think it's got to do with the weird hitboxes, camera zoom, and designs. So first, the world is a desert, and often it's hard to tell where exactly the floor is on a lot of the objects, probably due to the perspective, which is nice to add depth, but unintentionally makes it more difficult to know exactly where you will land, which may be a slight problem. Another thing is the fact that the enemy cycles are deceptively difficult to avoid early on. They just jump around, but for some reason, due to Flash platformer physics, maybe, which I haven't played much of recently, or at all yet. Wow. Climber kind of counts, but it's kind of strange. Another reason this game may be deceptively difficult, aside from the potential soft lock, thanks, is the weapon you get, which is a nail that's thrown at a slight upwards angle, then curves downwards. This makes it surprisingly difficult to hit enemies. Due to their jumping nature, you need to time the attack, because there's a delay between hitting the button and the nail being thrown. Honestly, I think I'm just bad at video games. Welting 2 Electric Boogaloo is a re-release with an enhanced version of the game. The best comparison I can make is stuff like the third version of Pokemon games or stuff like Persona 5 Royal and Persona 4 Golden. Closer to the Persona comparison, and I agree, it is a better version. Fixes a few problems I had. Either that, or I knew what to expect, or I'm delusional. Firstly, they make the movement feel less slippery. When at higher speeds, I still feel like I slide a bit, but overall the controls feel tighter, which is great. Secondly, it made the hitboxes of a few things feel more justifiable. I feel like most of the times I should have eaten it, I did eat it, and didn't have any moments where I feel like the hitboxes were strange, which is good. Finally, I believe they slowed down the movement of the new charging guys, so they are less unfair for new players and are easier to react to, which I do appreciating. Welting 2 still has quite a few flaws, like these guys who throw spears from the background still being quite easy to miss the first time, and Peachy can still be a pain to hit, but overall pretty good. They also added a new mode, which is a variation of survival where it constantly rains down dumplings, and it was pretty decent. Overall, it's definitely a worthwhile improvement on Welting 2. Either that, or I'm delusional. I'm probably delusional. Host, which I cannot physically place because Host was an online multiplayer game. Welp. Okay, so Guppy was apparently unreleased, but it's on the Wikipedia article, which was my basis for this, so I played it. Guppy is actually the name of Edmund's cat that, at the time, which he got among a litter of kittens while working at Animal Control in 2002. So let's play What the Hell Is This? Okay, yeah, I don't have much to say since this is a prototype. The movement, if refined, could be really fun. I do like how the thing moves around. Could have been a pretty good game if it wasn't cancelled. Actually, why not? Let's just quickly speedrun through what the cancelled games Edmund had planned. You have this, which was in 2007, you have the Badlands in 2004, Badlings in 2006, Book of Knots, which was cancelled in 2007 and became Gish 2, which was cancelled in 2008, Grumbly, which will apparently resume development after Mutagenics, which is going to be Edmund's newest game release soon, in 2007, apparently, I don't know. Tracknid Episode 2 for Flash, which got cancelled in 2008, god damn it. Office Yeti, which got cancelled in 2007, Bacterium, which was cancelled in 2008, No Quarter, which was cancelled in 2009, finally Ouroboros, which was cancelled in 2016 for Windows and became a game much later in the timeline. If it wasn't obvious, we're still in like 2007. How do I transition to Bloodcar 2000? Bloodcar 2000 is an interesting little game. You have two main modes and they are both decent. You have the main arcade mode where you are provided with a series of levels I didn't get far into, but were decently fun from what I could do. The main objective of level is to run over all the people in the area. This was fun enough. My main issue, which may just be my very legitimate Flash player issue, but whenever I start a level I had to click on the window before I could actually move my car. For some reason after clicking a menu option it just says nope, you can't drive. I don't know why. This definitely affected my performance because it took me a little while to figure out what the issue was. You also have a secondary racing mode where you're given a couple courses throughout the town and have to drive. I honestly would have preferred if this focused on being a top-down racer, perhaps where the more people you run over the faster your car moves or something, because it would have been really cool to see this mode expanded on. First place times are really difficult. This is because I've been using the easy car the entire time. There's actually a second harder car which is faster and slippier. I kind of like the balance but wish there was a different time barrier for each vehicle. Aside from one major glitch slash bug, it was a pretty fun little game. From this point forward, there's a very high chance I'll spoil the entirety of these games, so I'm just letting you know now. This is the Flash game I've been the most interested in due to the fact it's apparently an autobiographical game, which sounds interesting. Okay, so Coil. So cool, that's all I can say. There's my review. I don't know what to think of this game, mainly because I'm completely confused. So there's two different stories going on, I believe. So the first one, which you play through, is the life cycle of this little alien fetus creature. I think you go through from this point to death. The second story is about this guy and this girl, but it feels incredibly incoherent and doesn't make sense. And I don't know how they can join, how these two stories related. Secondly, it took me way too long to figure out you have to spin the mouse around in a circle to advance level. I genuinely thought this was just taking ages to load initially because it's not obvious you have to do this. I'm not sure exactly when or how I figured this out, but I did. I think it might have had to do with every time I advanced I'd click to the mouse button. The game segments all play differently and none of them control badly, except for one which I genuinely don't have any clue how to play it. I think it might just be mess around for a while, I'm not exactly sure. Aside from that, they all work for the task given. I think my favorite would be the one where you have to descend, as that has the most responsive and the best controls. Just wait a minute and let me listen to the Q&A in the basement collection and I'll get back to you. Oh my god, that makes so much sense now! This would actually be surprisingly good text to analyze for English or something because it's full of symbols and different interpretations. In the interview, it's mentioned that one of the interpretations is abortion, which, yeah, I can totally see that. The text is quite unliteral and the gameplay being the life cycle of this fierce-looking creature could support that. Another fun one was a word beginning with R. Yeah. The intended meaning behind it was inspired by Edmund's stepfather's death, and the central focus is death. I found out after I heard that, everything slowed into place. The life cycle sort of showing her new life, this obsession of death, and then the thing dying at the end, but struggling parallels her unwillingness to die in the end. The he in this story is just death. I don't know the Puss in Boots quote, god damn it. This is genuinely either too much for my little brain to handle, or the story is poorly written, your choice. I also figured out how the one level I couldn't understand controlled. You use your tentacles to eat up this thing. I guess I just didn't see the top half of the screen. It's not really a good game, but sure is an interesting experience. Just be aware you have to circle to progress though. Also, what are they on with this being autobiographical thing? What do you mean? Oh wait a minute, Valvecap actually sent me the deluxe version before I was playing deluxe, oops. I still haven't played the regular Bloodcar. God God damn it, I thought we were past the dead baby games. Wait, what do you mean I can play this one? You have two different modes. Free play, which lets you find the characters to dress up as your own, and also score mode, where you go through a bunch of levels trying to create the characters they give you. I got stuck on Mario because I didn't know what I was missing. Game is fine, there just isn't a lot to it. Yeah, okay, maybe it's good I didn't have to play the same game like 6 more times. This was the only Flash game that was set in an exe file, interestingly. I think I have malware now. You either play a 1 or 2 player game and you're aiming to find as much of something as possible until the rocket explodes. This game is weird and feel kind of nothing. Could have been cool. I'm not sure how, but it could have. Oh, no. Hey Valvecap, I have another game you need to cover. Okay, so in C word you are a what the fuck? It's such a strange experience, but in the best possible way. You're a little alien carrying a boy through his imaginations, fly around to planets trying to figure out what to do on each of them. The puzzles for the most part have got to do with you trying to figure out what you can interact with and then interacting with all of that object or element. So on the first planet I encountered, you have to push all the mini planets / meteors into the planet itself, and then it becomes yellow. They're simple, but most of the time easy to identify and do. Main thing I really like about this game is the atmosphere. You can change it slightly depending on which soundtrack you decide to use, since there's 3. I chose soundtrack A and it helped perfectly portray the feeling of wonder and discovery in a game while keeping it sort of spacey and somewhat melancholy. The music also adapts depending on which planet you are close to and adds some different instruments. This is so cool! The story is also awfully bittersweet. I think that's the right word. Boy runs away and finds an alien who lets him get on and allows him to get out into space. After you complete each puzzle and approach the Earth, you just go through it and then land on the moon. The boy is so far in his imagination that his grip on the Earth leaves, being in his imagination forever. It's so freaking sad, but it's also like happy in a way. Such a strange ending, which alluded to a sequel. Out of every game, this is the one I want to see the sequel to most. I really want to see what else can be done, because I think it could do like a cool puzzle game, which is a bit more like open, where you fly to each planet and have to solve something, or like a little dungeon like Zelda, but better, with a different swing mechanic. Apparently he might be making Aether 2 after Mutagenics, but for Wikipedia said different, so I'm not sure. Meat Boy is Edmund's first game mate with Team Meat, formerly known as Team Something, I forgot to look it up. Oops. Which was co-developed with Tommy I can't pronounce that last name, I'm sorry. It's a short little platformer game with about 60 levels, each being less than 30 seconds. Most of them are less than like 10 seconds as well. The story is Bandage Girl gets kidnapped by Dr. Fetus and Mr. Meat Boy has to go get her back. Pretty simple, but it's fine. The main thing I find odd about the game is that it's in portrait phone orientation. This was considered a prototype for a proper game they were planning on making for Windows and console, spoilers. It's also just an awkward orientation for platformers in general, so I'm not sure why they had it like this. I just find it a bit strange. The controls quite literally could not get more basic. Run and jump. With a wall jump you can do. These would work fine if it wasn't for the physics. Not a biggest fan of them. Meat Boy just runs way too fast for this orientation with no way to slow him down, and overall it just feels a bit off. The level design was built around this so overall I just found it okay. This game does include a level editor, which is honestly pretty cool. You just have to copy the piece of code and boom, it's a level. Pretty intuitive for a Flash game, I believe. Then again, I haven't played that many. Most of them were like made way after this game, so you can actually unlock some characters in this game which are little references, which is neat, but they're just aesthetical changes. Clubby killing season ain't great. It's better than regular Clubby though. You sort of just move around hoping these guys run into your chainsaw. It's less interactive, but wasn't as annoying to play. How do I have less to say about this than Snack-O-Lantern? Grey Matter is a simple arcade style game where you're this little dot and have to hit the brains on all the enemies to kill them. I was honestly scared to play this one because I had cerebral discharge, this little blurb in Basement Collection, but no, it's fine. I honestly or don't have much to say about it. You do find this little tapeworm enemy to be quite annoying, as it's incredibly easy to hit their little no-no line. It technically does have an end, but I never ended up reaching that or trying that hard because I suck. Yeah. If you like Meat Boy, here's more Meat Boy, but with fan creator stages instead of ones made by the devs. It's a nice way to acknowledge community members. Yeah, I don't have much more to say. It's more meat. I believe AVGM stands for Angry Video Game Machine. I don't know where I got that, so take it with a grain of salt. It's a clicker game where you flick a light switch where every time you get to a point a new object appears. Firstly, it's after you click twice, and then after you click the next 4 times you get a new thing, then after 8, etc. I personally had aside from the naked woman jump scare, Jesus Christ. What the hell, Edmund? Luckily, if you don't want something, you can just drag it off the screen and it'll disappear. You can beat this game, but unfortunately it doesn't save in the middle of a session, so you have to do it all in one shot. Guess I'm not finishing this game either. One thing I have to mention, because it's unironically really freaking good, and I don't know why, it's the music. The song is called Blooper Doob Scooper, and I would play the entire thing, but we should get a move on, so here's a little sample. Spewer is a 2D platform which uses projectile vomiting as the main mechanic, and honestly it's really good. It's also pretty long, taking about an hour to beat. You're this little man, so it's already got little guy points. He can swallow and inhale vomit to be used for puzzle solving, and pretty much every level is well designed. The main controls, aside from being a bit buggy at a few points, are incredibly solid. I'm not even gonna lie, this and the next ones are the main Flash games to make me forget I'm playing a Flash game. They genuinely feel like they are more than just browser games. The main thing where I start becoming not a huge fan is in a couple of rooms and a spew type. The second one you get after the basic one, which works as you expect, is this cloudy white one that floats in the air. My main problem with this is that it's really hard to aim because it fires in a direction before stopping so you can swim properly in it. It can be really annoying to properly aim it. And when it does this, it sometimes just gets essentially air bubbles, which makes it so that you can't go up it. I kind of wish it was better. Overall though, it's solid. Time. I'm just gonna call it time because I don't want to say that second word, is a 2D puzzle platform where you play as Steven, I think, who goes through a box with a future and past Stevens and also in a box talking to you. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really get the story like at all. There's definitely a lot more that is within the dialogue and symbolism and all that jazz, which I just don't understand. So I'm not gonna analyze it because I don't know how. Instead I'm gonna touch on the puzzles. The puzzles are pretty good for the most part. Chapter 1 is technically near flawless in the puzzle style. I personally found a lot of them challenging and fair. The main gimmick is the ability to switch between the 2 different planes where you can move some items in between. I never felt like any puzzle was impossible, but quite a few were challenging. My issues start in chapter 2. Some of these puzzles are incredibly difficult and feel near impossible to solve if you aren't already really good at the game or just with puzzles in general. I know how this can be a non-criticism, but even in a game like Portal or Portal 2, a puzzle, if difficult, never felt impossible to solve. Same in platformers, even though the challenge may feel impossible, it does feel like with enough time I could get it. I genuinely had to look up a guide for a few of these because of how difficult and confusing they were. That's mainly because some levels in this chapter have 3 layers, which really don't work, in my opinion. The 2 planes made it incredibly easy to see what's coming up and plan ahead, but with one plane being constantly hidden out of view, it makes it way too difficult to know what to do for some. And for someone who isn't that great at puzzles, it's practically impossible. Puzzle games have this really strange task where they have to be difficult enough so that people who are good at them actually enjoy themselves, but they have to be easy enough so then people who aren't as good feel like they can actually beat it. So this is probably just a personal thing and not being the biggest fan of puzzle games in general. though I'm starting to doubt that recently. If you want a practically infinite amount of stages to play, you have the unknown, which generates random user-generated stages. Somehow, I generally don't know how. There is a level maker, but I don't know how in Flash games they're able to make a database of the levels, where they slowly rise in difficulty. I haven't played with this too much, but it could be cool. Overall, pretty good game. Oh hey, the first one I've played before actually deciding to go through all of this. Neat. Super Meat Boy is the full game of Meat Boy, but with a lot of changes because they had to build it from the ground up, considering this was planned to release on all major consoles, and Flash is not something that can work on consoles. Physics have changed a lot, and he feels so much nicer to control. Meat Boy feels like he falls at a much more reasonable speed now, which helps the platforming quite a bit. Makes it feel a lot fairer than the Flash Meat Boy. Now, you do have very similar speed, which could get annoying, but it is locked behind a sprint button and isn't the default run speed, which is such a nice addition, because if you want more precise platforming, you can let go and have better control. You might not want to do this though because of the speedrun times. This game heavily encourages speed running. Throughout quite a few of the levels, there are riskier shortcuts you can take to become faster. You also have an A+ time per level, which you're incentivized to do because you're able to unlock a harder version of that same level on the map called a Dark World level. You also have bandages in some of the levels, which are usually out of the way but difficult to get. I'm not entirely sure about these. These are in Flash, and I have similar thoughts there. The bandages aren't in every level, just a random spread of random levels, which makes it hard to track them all down if you want to get all of them in a world, or just want to unlock some of the characters, which we'll get to. I personally would like it if there was more of a pattern with these, or at least a symbol to show the player which levels the bandages are located in. One way you can get bandages which don't involve playing through the main levels is the warp zones, which can be found throughout some levels. They're still random. Every warp zone gives you 3 lives and 3 levels you have to beat back to back in this retro style. Everything acts the same as a regular Super Meat Boy, but just the looks differ mainly. I honestly think they're a pretty neat addition for the game for more content. Even though they aren't required to beat the game, I have done quite a few of them. Each world has a boss which starts okay, but then gets not very good. First 3 are pretty fun. The last one is, but the middle 2 suck. The boss for Hell is really bad. Essentially requires you to trial and error pattern due to the very little telegraph on their attacks, making it incredibly difficult to anticipate unless you know the attack cycle first. Rapture, which is the second time it's appeared in one of these games. The first one is in Gish. I don't know why in either. The boss for the Rapture are the Larrys, and they're just a pain to actually get to jump in the swords and kill them. This game, like Flash, also has multiple characters, but they all play differently and are also references. The character's different between the versions a bit, I believe. If you wanted to play as Gish, you'd have to have a console version, which is pretty much impossible now with the Xbox 360 shutting down. Wait, what do you mean this game's on Switch? Since when? I got the PC version, so I have a goofy looking head crab, which I'm very happy with. I love this little guy. I think the crossover element is pretty neato. The only thing is that a lot of the characters do have different controls, and a lot of them can't beat a decent chunk of the levels due to those controls, which is quite unfortunate. You also unlock a secret character you can get by typing this, which I'm not going to say, to unlock Tofu Boy. He's a jerk character that has the slowest run speed and jump height out of every character. This is a response to Peter, who made a Super Tofu Boy game, because Peter is weird. I would complain because I'm a grass eater, but Peter are kind of crazy, so I don't really mind. This game is also really challenging. The levels may only be a minute long at most, but especially the end, and apparently the Con Alley thing, I took like an hour to beat one level. I personally enjoy the challenge. Not a lot of the achievements though. To 100% the game, you have to beat each world without dying once. That is a pretty damn insane achievement, because especially in the later worlds where it can take a long time to beat each level once, it can feel a little unfair. If you're crazy enough, go for it though. I'm not. Overall, Super Meat Boy is a great platformer. It's a large improvement over Flash and is probably worth it even today. So, The Binding of Isaac. I'll be real, I played Rebirth before Flash, which probably ruined this game in playability. I've only really beat Mom because somehow Rebirth just feels a million times better. I'll just get into the game story. Isaac and his mother live on a hill when God says, "Hey man, protect your child from evil and then kill him, alright?" And then Isaac says, "Oh!" and jumps down a hole. Apparently this is based off a biblical story, and if the Wikipedia article is anything to go by, then yeah, it kind of is. The gameplay is a dungeon crawler roguelike where you shoot out tears to kill enemies, and let me talk about this art style. It's mainly just a bit mismatched. All the enemies in Isaac don't look like they belong in the backgrounds. Now, I don't really know how to critique this game properly outside of that because I've played Rebirth and it somehow feels a lot nicer. I don't know how to explain it. I think one reason may just be movement tweaks, which makes it feel nicer and smoother overall. I generally don't know. The game is semi-inconsistent with the frame rate, which I think it makes it feel not as nice to play because it feels less smooth. Frame rate being low, however, shows how impressive this game truly is. This was made in Flash. This is genuinely impressive for what I'm aware of is Flash capabilities. I am genuinely really impressed. I might as well go over the main structure of the game. I'm unfortunately lost on how to properly script this. So you're little Isaac and you shoot tears out like slow moving bullets with set range. You traverse through dungeon style areas and get to the boss of that floor. This is a good structure since the bosses are randomized, it helps with variation. The bosses themselves seem fine enough. Where can I move on to Repentance? Oh god, help me. I don't want to talk about the Binding of Isaac. I want to talk about the Binding of Isaac. Since I'm doing this with Rebirth at this point and beyond, I might as well just touch on all the characters and bosses. Well, at least the main bosses introduced in this game, but base it on Rebirth because I don't want to play any more of this game. So, the final mob fight. When you know what to do in a fight, it's pretty good. When you actually learn how attacks work and how not to die, to stomping, it's fun enough fight. The only problem is with both this and the next boss I'm gonna probably decide to cover is that they go down really easily in late game runs, which is kind of underwhelming. Anyway, there is the Binding of Isaac. God decides to spare your life by killing your mother with a bibble. The day is saved. Damn it. How this game works is that by being a certain ending a lot is how you get new areas and more endings. So once you beat Mum, you unlock Worm. I'm not gonna lie, I completely ignore the fact that it's Worm. And I just don't think about what that is. It's just a thing. Ugh. Maybe Isaac is the reason I'm insane. In Worm, you take 1 heart of damage from anything, not just a select few things, which I originally was against as I felt like it sort of made the game too hard, but after playing it so much more, it actually makes the game better because by the time you get to that point, there's a good chance you have a lot of hearts, which sort of makes the later areas extremely easy. This is proven by one of the items, the wafer, making all these areas deal half heart of damage, and yeah, I agree, it does get too easy with all the health. I'm actually impressed by how deceptively good this decision was. One thing I'm a bit iffy about is the fact that there's no more treasure rooms from this point forward. That honestly is a design decision I don't like because there's a good chance you won't make it all the way to the final boss if you don't steamroll Mum. I feel like on Worm 1 at least, there should be a treasure room or a shop. In fact, that would work better because as soon as you pass steps 2, coins have no value with how that works, aside from the beggar, which doesn't always spawn and can sometimes be in locations that you can't really reach. The boss is Mum's Heart, which is honestly really fun when it works, and you aren't evaporating them in 2 hits. Yeah, Mum Heart nearly, for me, always feels like it's too easy, and quite often the final attack with the laser bugs out and never works as it should, which is a bit underwhelming. Then you get a new ending, which unlocks an item and a character 10 more times. After you've unlocked all these, you get It Lives, which is pretty much the same boss. You also unlock a couple characters through being Mum Heart so many times. Before going on with the final area in the game, I'm just going to cover the characters of this game in reference to Rebirth again, because I don't want to play this game, and they act pretty much the same between versions from what I've seen. So, firstly, you have Mcmillen, or I don't know. You might be thinking it's Isaac with a ring. You are correct. You get 1 extra heart and a Yum Heart, which I do personally like. It's pretty good. You have Cain, which is the only character I've actually unlocked in Flash so far, which is a character you kind of have to get used to, or at least I did, because with Isaac you have 2 eyes, so you shoot somewhat differently at different points, but with Cain it's a single one, which can take a little bit of getting used to, but otherwise he's a pretty good character. You can unlock key chests for free with his paperclip that he starts with, and he also has bonus luck, and all of his pills are pills with benefits, apparently. Some pills, like the one that makes you larger, is not really a good effect, but I guess it's better than Tears Down since... Actually, I don't think it is. you have Judas, which is a pretty interesting character. He starts on 1 health but has high base damage in the Book of Belial, which raises his damage even more. He personally isn't really my thing, but he's a character I still consider good. I do enjoy him. Eve is Edmund's favorite character, interestingly enough. She's okay. Her gimmick, whenever she gets hit, the dead bird goes attacks the enemy, and whenever she's on 1 or less red hearts, increases her damage significantly. This is meant to pose a risk wars, but I personally am not a fan of the low base damage. I don't play as her as much due to a result from that. There is something added in Rebirth which I won't cover, which does improve it a decent bit, but I'm still not the biggest fan. And then finally, the last character to be introduced in this game is ? Or commonly referred to as Blue Baby. This is probably my favorite character only because one of my friends, Oddparts, is obsessed with it, and it's rubbed off on me a little bit as well. How could you not love this silly little boy? Yeah, my friend does a daily drawing of blue babies. If you like daily stuff and like Isaac, I would recommend checking it out. It's on Redacted, Tumblr, and Blue Sky, I believe. Anyway, here's a challenge character which people seem to hate for some reason. He has no red hearts and only blue hearts and can't pick up any of the red ones. Honestly, this is a really good idea for a challenge character, and I don't get why people hate him so much. And that is the selection. Pretty good. They all build off different aspects and are overall at least good. I forgot Eve existed, honestly. The worst character being okay is still really solid. Now the final area after you beat its lives is Sheol. It's alright. I just find it a bit too dark in my personal opinion, but the enemies are fine and I don't find it too annoying. At the end, you have Satan, the final boss of the Binding of Isaac, which makes so much sense with how extremely different it is compared to a lot of the other bosses, because it has 3 phases. First, you have this guy who's just a regular boss for some reason, who after you kill, you get Satan. I find his attack cycle a little unfair in some aspects, but I could just be bad. I find that there is very little telegraph and you sort of have to react way too quickly. And then finally, it's literally just the stomp attack, but again, okay, sure. Overall, it is a decent fight. I'm still not a fan of Isaac Flash. While impressive in laying foundation of what would become a really damn good game, it just doesn't do anything better than Rebirth. In fact, most of what it does is worse. Wrath of the Lamb is an expansion to the game which includes 70% more content. Oh, I might have been playing the Wrath of the Lamb expansion the entire time, so I need to replay base. Yeah, no, I don't really want to do that, so I'm just gonna say what I'm aware of. This DLC outside of items adds 2 new endings/floors, 4 floor variants, and 1 new character. I want to go into Good Isaac, oh my god. Anyway, let's do rapid fire with this to get it over and done with. All new variations of regular floors are good. They have about the same difficulty level and aren't very annoying, which is very appreciated. First new ending has you go to the cathedral, which is an area I like as much as Sheol, but with better aesthetics. In fact, I might actually like it better than Sheol. And the final boss you fight is Isaac. What? Isaac is a really good boss though, in my opinion. I really like it. Chest has 4 chests to start off with, which is really appreciated, and they always seem to be good, so yippee! Also, this comes after you fight Isaac. Most of the floor, if not all, are previous bosses from the first few floors, which is okay until Gertie is at a 2x0.7 room. Remember, I'm basing this off Rebirth because I don't want to play this game. The boss is Blue Blub, which is just Isaac again from what I can tell, but he has a few flies surrounding him. Underwhelming, but I can't be mad at Blubs. The new character is Samson, which is pretty good and was probably my most used character at one point in Rebirth. If he gets hit on a floor, he does more damage up to 6 triggers, and I like this. It's a self-harm that Eve has, but also better. Also, Jesus Christ, why is there 2 self-harm characters? Oh god, wait, I forgot about the story, which I haven't covered because I haven't described the endings, but about a suicidal 5-year-old. I'm done with Isaac Flash! Between the development of Isaac and Isaac Wrath of Lamb DLC, a documentary released with Edmund being a part of it. Should I include? Yeah, screw it. Indie Game the Movie has a Steam release. That's how I watched it, through Steam. It's strange. In this documentary, you follow Edmund and Tommy releasing Super Meat Boy, Mr. Fish doing some development and showing off Fez at some expo, and an interview with the creator of Braid. The stories of Mr. Fish and Team Meat are actually incredibly interesting and intriguing. Braid is just kind of there. It just feels like with Braid, they only included it to have at least one big name in the synopsis just in case Super Meat Boy failed and Fez fell off the face of the earth. There isn't really much interesting there unless you have played the game. I still enjoyed the segments, but in the second half its full attention is on Team Meat and Fish. While it's certainly my preference, may be a bit disappointing for Braid fans who watched it for Braid. Edmund and Tommy's story was the most interesting to me, probably because I actually played Super Meat Boy. It was interesting to see how much potential Super Meat Boy had to change their lives and how isolated Tommy became due to the game. On average, I'm more happy to see Edmund talk because I've played these games which don't have a dead babies, cerebral, or C-word in the title. I unfortunately have the displeasure of knowing what C-word looks like because they showed footage of it. Mr. Fish was also really comparing because how his ex-partner left him and the stress and mental turmoil he had to take because his ex-partner had to sign a contract letting him continue developing and releasing the game. The mental turmoil was depressing but intriguing in the sense that I wanted him to actually be able to release the game. I know that he does release Fez, which I always thought was a tie-in for these Pez dispensers, but it's still really good. Despite being a really good documentary with really compelling stories, my main issue is how hellish the movie portrays an indie dev. It makes it seem like their only good thing is the feeling of finally getting the project done and having the burden lifted up off your shoulders. I asked Yukon, the head of Snoozy Kazoo who made the Turnip Boy games, in their Discord server if this was the case, and she said the industry had changed since then, and while it can be stressful in times and stuff like crunch, there's still a lot to enjoy. It's just a hard job, and I wish Mr. Fish the best. Wait, what do you mean he said a lot of horrible stuff in quick game development? The Basement Collection is a collection of Breadman's better Flash games which I've all covered previously today. I'm not going to cover the quality of the games themselves because they would just add padding and not be necessary. What I am going to comment on is how cool this is as a package. The Basement Collection actually contains a lot of side content about the games and just about Edmund himself. Every game besides maybe AVGM, I'm personally a bit confused about how this works, but oh well, have a sizable amount of extras you can look through. There are interviews which you can actually get the audio files to if you want to listen to them outside of the game. There's concept art, sometimes there are demos, cut scenes from Indie Game the Movie, and they're all really cool. Outside of those, you have some more dedicated extra areas which are also really cool to look at. You have old art from Child Ed, some art from not Child Ed. You have The Lonely Hermit, which was something earlier, but this isn't a Flash version, it's just whatever you call this, and Thicker Than Water, a 65-page 3-panel comic strip, which is actually pretty decent. Better than Lonely Hermit at least. Aside from some questionable stuff in it, it was a bit of fun and had a few good jokes. Also based on Edmund's childhood. This poor man. You also have the OST where you get taken to the files of the game and have each of them, which is cool having this game allow you to use all their music and have it preserved in high quality. At least as high quality as a Flash song can be, which is awesome. Overall, I think it's definitely worth the $15 it costs today if you have any interest in the package. The extras alone are worth that. And you have 6, technically 7, technically 10 if you access the files and have a Flash player, extra games which are part of it too. In Facist, you enter a name and it randomly picks a picture to show you what you are. It's not even consistent. It shouldn't have even been a proper section, but it just happened to release after most other Flash games. This was the last Flash game Edmund developed. Sort of underwhelming. Okay, so I know a certain game comes next in the timeline, but I'm just gonna cover this one because it became in between DLC, so then I can cover the main game and both the DLCs in a row. So... Think it is a game where you identify a victim and then execute them on an electric chair. Jesus Christ, that's harsh. It would be fine, a little $2 game. Identity based on the hints provided would be fun. Except for the fact, I swear to God, these games' hints suck a lot. So many of them are subjective, like if they look ugly or like a total freak, which makes them hard to identify who it is due to the subjectiveness of it. You have to find the game's definition, which is just frustrating. If you want to try it and fork over $3, I won't judge though. Wow, that's very short. I feel like I'd have so much more to say on this. Oh my god, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth is really goddamn good. Holy crap. Rebirth is the remake of Flash Binding of Isaac. Got conceived by Nicholas going up to Edmund and going, yo, you want help bringing Isaac to consoles? We'll need to remake it, bring it to consoles. Okay. Then we got The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, I think. Don't quote me. Now, the main thing they improved on is the game feel. Something about Flash felt choppy and unnatural. Here, the movement feels so much smoother and much nicer to move around. The game also has got a graphical overhaul with a more pixel art style, which looks great. No fact that some of the sprites in Rebirth look crappy, and don't ask why this looks better. Overall, the game looks a lot more cohesive in art style and was able to ensure you can see what is interactive interactable and what is floor/background. Now, aside from the much nicer feel of the game, which in my opinion makes it incredibly fun, the new content outside of the items, because this game is essentially what a second Binding of Isaac expansion would be if that's possible, due to Flash limitations not making it possible. Not gonna lie, I'm thankful for that. I really don't want to play more Flash. Firstly, the new characters. A lot of the old characters are pretty much the same, with just the unlock method changing. First new character is Azazel. Instead of tears, he fires a short-range brimstone, which does a lot of damage every tick, but requires you to charge it up before firing. He can also fly. Azazel by far is one of the easiest characters in the game, because once you get used to how the brimstone works, he can kill most enemies with ease. Honestly, I think he's just a bit too powerful for the early game. Next up is Lazarus. When Lazarus dies once per floor, he becomes Lazarus Risen, where he gains more power but is left on only one heart container. I'm not the biggest fan of Lazarus, as that dying bit I usually don't use, and the fact you only come with one heart container. I also just don't like how he's got one less luck, so it makes it so that whenever I do a run with Lazarus, I feel like I do significantly worse than any other character. Sorry, Lazarus. Next up is Eden, which is the best standard attacking character, so ones that fire out tears from their head. That is because he is gambling. Each time you spawn, he starts with a different stats, health, and items, and just requires you to get Eden tokens by beating Mum's Heart, which can be a tad annoying. I understand why this is so you can't just keep re-rolling for Eden tokens to get the best possible outcome and sweep the early game. Finally, you have Alot, which is a character I'm lucky to have right now. So to unlock him, you need to beat a new boss as Isaac to unlock the missing poster, and then when you have the missing poster, you need to die in a sacrifice room. I was playing as a character in the final DSC who randomizes everything when they get hit, and I got the poster. So what I had to do is get hit down to one heart, then go grab the poster and hope to God it works. It obviously did. The Lost has flight and tears that can go through walls. Wait, what do you mean that was only added in Afterbirth? What? But has 0 health. It's decent, but not a character I use a lot because you have to beat the game perfectly. In the next DLC, you can unlock a Holy Mantle of Lost to start with, giving him 1 hit per room, which is nice, but I personally feel like it weakens the challenge character aspect on him. I also have yet to unlock the Holy Mantle. Overall, new characters are decent. I enjoyed them all to some extent, but most of them are just okay to decent. Now, the new area and major bosses, which are all quite small even compared to Wrath of the Lamb. A singular new area with the Dark Room. It's a hell version of Chest, with most, if not every room being bosses. At the end, you get the Lamb, which is an overall pretty decent boss. After beating him, you get the choice of going on a victory lap, which is Isaac's looping feature. To ensure you don't go for quite literally forever, they remove half your items every 2 loops and turn you into the Lost during the 3rd loop. Victory lap is okay overall, don't have much to say. Now, the final boss of Rebirth has a really stupid condition to actually get to him. Fight the boss, you need key pieces gained by defeating Uriel and Gabriel, who are angel people. To fight them, you either need to blow up 2 angel statues, which are only found in the angel room, which has a random chance to appear on any floor, or by finding a sacrifice room, and they'll appear on the 9th and 11th sacrifice in a sacrifice room, so that means you need at least 11 hearts on that one floor to actually get them to spawn. I personally despise this. It just makes it so that I don't go to that boss as often due to the luck needed. Anyway, Megaseer himself, for some reason, doesn't have a health bar, which I dislike. Is actually a really fun boss fight. I've fought him a couple times and I think it's pretty good. His unlock method is just way too luck dependent for me to try and attempt him a lot. Maybe if it was a golden key item, then maybe it would be okay. Then if I found an angel room, I could think about if I want to go kill Megaseer and not having to rely on getting 2 angel rooms actually appearing, because perfecting a floor is pretty damn hard to get it consistent. I'm not sure. Overall, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, pretty damn good. Despite the content added not being as good as Wrath of the Lamb, the entire game feels so much nicer and is overall much better. Perhaps one of the 2 next expansions created over the next 3 years are better. Wow, after looking at the wiki to find what they added in Afterbirth, I genuinely think this update might have made this game slightly worse. It also could have made it slightly better. The only good additions, besides from the more stuff I don't include, is the inclusion of new room shapes, which I'm surprised wasn't in when Rebirth released. Anyway, the main thing that makes this update weaker, the new floor types for chapters 1 and 4, specifically Flooded Caves and Scarred Worm. Burning Basement is on the same level as the other variations, and Dank Depths can just be a little too dark sometimes. Personally, I find Flooded Caves annoying and much more difficult and not as fun as as the regular counterparts. The extra enemies exclusive to flooded caves are just a plain annoying to take out. The main one I think of is the water flies. Bomb flies are already an enemy which are somewhat annoying, but is recited by the fact that they explode. The water flies the annoyance more by adding a 6-way tear burst, which I don't like. It makes the satisfaction of boom, they're all dead a lot less satisfying because you have to focus on dodging the extra little tears things. Scarred Worm just makes me uncomfortable in general. Like, it's fine and as the same as regular worm and other worm, but the aesthetics are just blah. The only completely new flaw is question mark. I would expose about what this thing is, but I don't want to. It's a flaw which only exists for a boss and one of the 2 new endings this update. You have 4 chests, 2 treasure rooms, and a shop in the beginning area, and each treasure room has 2 items to pick from, which are pretty neat. Afterwards, you open up the door and face Hush, which is probably my favorite boss in the game overall, at least for final bosses. I find that most of the random ones are hard to rank since you fight them way less often. The first major phase of Hush, because technically it has like 6, is just a reskin of the Blue Baby fight, but in a much larger arena. The second phase is completely brand new. The best way I can describe it is as a bullet hell due to how many projectiles there are, but due to the speed they move at, the attacks feel fair. The only one that doesn't is just barely unfair. I personally find it really satisfying and rewarding to dodge all the projectiles, especially when, if you beat the boss, you get all the extra items from before. The new characters in this expansion can only be unlocked with the new mode, Greed Mode. It's a mode where you have to survive 8 waves of enemies where waves can overlap if you're too slow, and then beat 2 bosses which have a longer time between them, and you have to kill every regular enemy before facing them. Each wave summon grants you coins which you can spend in the expanded shop where you can buy an assortment of items. After the 5 floors, which replicate regular floors in Isaac, with the 5th one being Shield, not Cathedral, the 6th floor is a unique one called Shop. Finally, you have the final boss floor where you can face off a couple of Greeds, a Super Greed, Wrath, or Monstro for some reason, and then face off against Ultra Greed. He's meh. His attack cycles are fine, but he has way too much health in my opinion, and one attack which can really screw you over. And a lot of them I'm just not a fan of, really. Personally, it's a weak end to an overall weak mode, I personally think. Greed is just not a mode I want to return to often. Feels a lot more repetitive than the base game due to it's just fighting a lot of enemies with no exploration, and the fact that there's only one associated ending and path. So once you've been it once, aside from getting the mark, it's very little reason to actually play it again as the same character. Speaking of characters, the 2 new ones. The first one is Lilith, who's probably my favorite overall character in the entire game, including every DLC character. She has an incubus, which is a new familiar which follows you around and shoots the same tears you do. She has Cambion Conception, which is a new item, which summons new evil in air quotes familiars after you get hit enough, and a box of friends, which adds an extra little familiar for each one you have. So if you've got 2 incubuses, you get a 3rd one, but if you have one of them, you get 2. Lilith herself can't actually fire tears, and starts with 1 red heart and 2 black heart. Now, the fact you have to rely on familiar sounds annoying. I know it did to me. However, due to the fact that the incubus copies your tears, it's actually incredibly nice. I really like Lilith for 2 main reasons. First one is the disjointed place where you fire tears. This can be incredibly useful for multiple enemies. For enemies in tiny gaps, you can usually run past them and hide behind a rock and just let your incubus do all the work and hit them, which is incredibly useful. It's also useful for the skull enemies which hide, as it may let you get an extra tier or 2 off the enemy before they hide again. The second reason is the fact that you can get up to double your damage in 1/3 of the rooms in the game. The box of friends, as explained earlier, doubles the familiar incubus, so you can essentially get up to twice the tier damage against a boss. If you don't do double damage, due to how the incubuses are slightly separated, it gives you a higher chance of hitting the boss overall, which makes it faster. Now the second character, Keeper. I haven't unlocked him due to the fact at the end of Green Mode, you have a donation machine where you can put coins you didn't spend during the run, and you need 1,000 coins to actually unlock him. I have not done that, so I don't know about the quality. Oops. The Afterbirth Plus expansion might have also made the game slightly worse, but at least it's more just the late game content and not the early game. Anyway, let's go over the stuff I covered, with the new floors being first. There is 1 new floor. In my opinion though, it's a pretty damn good floor though, so it's fine. The Void, which can either be accessed by defeating Hush and going to this little door in the top right of his arena, or by getting lucky after defeating a different final boss and having a chance for a portal to spawn which takes you to the Void. This is by far the largest floor, with each room having a different previous floor as its theme, which is really cool. It also has 8 boss rooms, with only one having the actual final boss of the expansion in it. I personally like this, as despite the luck elements, the bosses that aren't the final one do give you items, so you aren't completely unlucky if you don't fight the final boss straight away. Now, the final boss of Void, Delirium, he kinda sucks. The concept is pretty good. He can transform into pretty much any other boss you encountered in the run, which is especially cool for thematic and suffocating child reasons. However, in execution, he kinda sucks. He's just a pain to do consistent damage on, as the arena is 2x2, and he can teleport around, so it's hard to find him and actually deal damage. I feel like an improvement to the fight would just be to have a smaller arena, which will make the hitting him problem not as prevalent. Now, before the characters, I'd like to mention Greedier mode, which is a harder version of Greed mode with the second phase of final boss. I've only played this once and I absolutely steamrolled everything, so I don't know much about this mode, but apparently it's just worse greed. Now the 2 characters. The first one is Apollyon, which you get by defeating Mega Satan. Sure, I quite like Apollyon. He gets a Void item, which can consume any other item in the game, which, if it's a passive, gives him a random buff to his stats, but if it's an active item, it essentially makes it part of a Void item when used, and it can hold multiple items if that made sense. It's a really cool ability, which I really like. The second character was added in a free booster pack, which just added in some community content. To get the character, you have to beat Mycelium 1 in less than a minute, and then blow up a bomb in the starting room to get a shovel piece, which causes Mum to stomp you all the way until you beat boss rush, and then you get the second piece, which you can use in the dark room on a special room to dig up a grave and get the Forgotten. I really like the Forgotten. Oh, wait a minute, boss rush! You beat 15 waves of 2 bosses and get 1 item to start it and 1 for beating it, and it's pretty okay. Anyway, the Forgotten, he has a melee attack where he swings a bone and you hold the tier button to charge up the bone to throw. If you press control, you can become the soul and fire like regular Isaac, but you've just got limited movement due to a chain connecting you to the main body. Overall, I really like this character. The melee attack is satisfying due to the high damage but risk reward of it. I personally, in games where ranged is usually a main option, I find I really enjoy the melee options due to the high power of them. And this is a good example of them. Overall, the Afterbirths are somewhat underwhelming. The new additions are often not the greatest, if not bad. While there are some highlights, such as the characters being by far the best in any of the other versions, it probably isn't worth it. Maybe. Again, I only played on the most recent version, so there may be a lot of more smaller changes I have not picked up on. Do you remember the cancelled Ouroboros? This is what it became, and it is the best basic, in air quotes, 2D platformer of all time in my opinion. When I say basic, it may sound like a negative, but think of stuff like the new Super Mario Bros. Series where, yeah, it's basic, but early on it was still well designed and fun. And people did enjoy the early games until it got milked to the ground. In the End of Nigh, the world ends. Then you, as Ash, aim to make a friend. You can run, jump, cling from hooks and corners, and that's it. You have some other things you can do, like break through blocks if you're fast enough, but that's more something you learn to do later in the game. This is all you have, which is fine, as long as the level design is good, and it feels nice, which Edmund nails here. Ash is genuinely the most responsive and tight-feeling character I have ever played. You practically have full control of him, with the only challenge being how well you can actually get that full control to work in your favor, which makes the game often feel rhythmic, especially later into the game. This is due to the consistency of most areas and threats, and your jump height being incredibly responsive. When you let go of the jump button, that is when you will start falling, and there is a bunch of different possible jump heights, which just makes this game feel so incredible, especially when you get to the tougher areas of the game. The main collectible of this game is tumors, which are these little black things amongst the world that have an extension of the platforming challenge present in each room. These are incredibly important later in the game, so do collect them. I wish the game implied this harder earlier, as if I wasn't deciding, you know what, I'll just collect for tumors. I would have been in a lot of strife later. The only 2 critiques of this game I have, okay 3, I just thought of a third, is the fact that firstly the rooms don't scroll at all. They are always square, which I kind of wish that there was some more variation in it, as it can feel restrictive and it would have added some nice variety. The camera does zoom out at some points, which kind of helps, but just having some taller areas might have worked better. Secondly is the fact that some enemies just feel inconsistent and are somewhat annoying. These flank dives come to mind, and finally is the fact that the navigation in some late mid-game areas are just annoying. The layouts of the rooms together kind of just make it hard to traverse, especially when replaying, and it makes it feel more maze-like, which is annoying. Overall, The End Is Nigh is an incredible platform with some of the best controlling gameplay I've ever seen in one of these games. I wish it was nearly as popular as Isaac due to how well it's designed. The Legend of Bumbo is a match 3 deck building roguelike that feels like it shouldn't work, but surprisingly it does. The story goes Bumbo like coin, his coin is taken, Bumbo angry and tries to get coin back. After the tutorial, which kind of sucks, you get put into your first run. You have 5 different tiles that appear on a 4x9 grid, and you have to get 4 in a row by sliding them around to make them disappear. To beat a room, you have to defeat all the enemies and then you move on to the next one. Interspersed are some item pickups, and at the end of a chapter, a boss fight. I quite like the main combat system. Each different tile gives you a different effect. Bones give you a bone to throw and attack, and if you match more than 4 in a row, you get more bones to throw. Teeth, I think they are, I'm not sure, gives you a tooth to throw and it powers up significantly if you match more than 4 in a row. Boogers, which you throw at enemies to make them stop moving for however many turns you throw on them. Poop, which you place on a row blocking enemy attacks. And finally, I'm just gonna say oil, but I know what it actually is, which when you match them, gives you extra moves. May seem fairly unuseful because you're spending a move to get a move, but actually it is incredibly helpful. Allows you to reposition pieces if need be, and gives you the corresponding mana with what item it is, which can be used to play card effects. Card effects is what makes this game incredibly fun. You have many different kinds that do all sorts of things. Some don't even require mana at all and just need you to beat so many rooms. The reason these are so fun is because they can allow you to keep your turn infinitely, whether it be by changing tiles to a random one and try to get a match, destroying tiles, or whatever else they may do. This makes Bumbo the Quick, or Cane Bumbo, to be extraordinarily fun because he has the ability to chain a lot of attacks together. It also makes you plan a lot, which I seem to really like. An issue I have is that there doesn't seem to be that many cards in the game. There are still like 50 or something, which sounds like a lot, but I feel like I got duplicates within 4 runs where I didn't do completely horribly. Keep in mind these runs I saw at most 8 cards, which is a lot less than 50, but it's not too bad. Runs haven't felt too stale. I think the fact that a run takes surprisingly a long time contributes to that. The main thing I like with this game is, which is going to sound really shallow, is the art style. I really like the cardboard aesthetic, mainly because not many people have attempted it before. Here it looks really good for the most part. The main menu looks so cheap though, oh god. It's meant to be like Isaac's, but something else had to be done. All the enemies in the game are well designed and fun. One can get a tad annoying and another one I have found annoying. These guys who hang from the ceiling become annoying if you have something like a fly or a booger because you have to waste turns waiting for them to fall. Another of those blue enemies, which are enemies which you can't hit with spells from cards only pieces on the board. These can get frustrating, especially since your spells often are your main source of damage, but they do get better as time progresses and you get more skilled. Beside those, all enemies and bosses aren't frustrating, excluding that one boss which has a similar mechanic to the ceiling worms, which is slightly annoying. All the characters I've used at the very least have been okay to use. The worst one is Bumbo the Brave, the ordinary one. Even still, he's only underwhelming due to the secondary card being kind of terrible. That's it. King Bumbo is my favorite, but Stout, Dead, and Lost aren't too bad either. Overall though, Bumbo good. You should get Bumbo. No, I'm not doing a good Bumbo impression. I suck at this. Before we get to the final video game, I believe we should cover the card games Edmund has designed, because they are in the Wikipedia article and that's what determines what I play. He made 2 card games, the first being The Binding of Isaac 4 Souls in 2018, then an expansion which I'll just group with the base game released in 2021. And this game is, or at least was, still receiving some booster packs until this year, which is now last year. I should have thought of this a bit better. I got the big box without the booster packs. The aim of the game is to collect 4 souls by either clearing certain conditions or killing enough enemies which contain souls to win. The gameplay is surprisingly simple. Each turn you draw a card and you can do one of a few things. You can activate any of your place down cards, use a card in your hand, or attack a monster. From the very little I've been able to play since I learned that one of my siblings don't like board/card games,
That's a little annoying. It's pretty fun. I feel like there are a few faults, but unfortunately I haven't been able to play enough to form a proper opinion. The second card game he designed is Tapeworm. Don't ask me why my box already looks a couple years old. In this game, you have to get rid of all your cards by making a really big worm. You can place down as many cards you like of one color as long as you don't end the worm trail you're on by forcing a color change. At least 50% of the cards have different conditions on them to help you win the game. I personally think it's okay. The fact you have to have 2 matching sections to end the game can personally get annoying when you know you just need to draw the right piece in order to win at the start of your turn and you just don't. The people I played with, however, seem to really enjoy the game. I think it is a really good game to play with people who don't play as complicated games such as Uno and most card games you can do with a standard pack of cards.
Oh my god, Repentance is generally the greatest thing this guy has ever touched. It's like a perfect enough DLC. Like, I'll give it a 10 out of 10 judging it as a DLC. Because, oh my god, every part of this is so cool. The music is, oh my god, the music's so good in the opera. Holy crap. Knowing me, I have just gone on a deranged, unorganized ramble about Repentance. So I've organized this voice recording while I recover from this.
You like it?
So first I want to touch on the game's development, because this story is actually pretty freaking insane. So, Afterbirth was a mod for the Binding of Isaac, which is very similar to Edmund's own expansions by adding new characters, flaws, etc. So Edmund Mcmillen did what everybody loves and hired the team to create the mod into an actual expansion and added some ideas that were made for the Binding of Isaac 2 into the game. I'm sorry, what? This is genuinely befuddling. How on earth did some people make a mod so good that it got worked into an actual expansion for the game? This is insanity. The first thing I should mention is a really big overhaul of a lot of stuff. Some of the characters got changes to their stats, and some, like Blue Baby, got graphical overhauls to look better, and a couple other characters did, such as Eve. I've only played on Repentance the entire time, so arguably I can't say much, but come on. This is so much better than this. A lot of the items got better balancing as well, I think. I generally don't think I would have noticed a lot of stuff if I hadn't looked it up and as the updates progressed. Generally, I'd have to stress this graphical overhaul is amazing because Lazarus used to look like this. Speaking of Lazarus, he had an overhaul where instead of losing all but one of these hearts when he rises and respawns, he respawns on one heart and loses a container unless he only had one. This is a really nice change and makes his gimmick feel not as underwhelming. In the end, the Binding of Isaac in total has 716 items to get. Holy crap, that is genuine insanity. Obviously a lot of them suck, but that's still an insane amount. 169 were added alone to this update. I have no idea how they got so many ideas. It's just impressive. Now the main bits of content I care about when it comes to these updates are the new endings and how to get to them and the characters. Repentance adds 2 new endings to the game which have completely different methods to get. The first one is what I believe the community, or it might be the actual game itself, has dubbed the alt path. The alt path is genuinely better than the base floors in every way. Now a decent amount of this is most likely due to the fact I just don't play the alt path floors as much as, say, the basement, but that still doesn't diminish the quality. After you defeat a boss on one of the first 5 floors, a door spawns which either requires keys, bombs, or blood to sacrifice to open depending on what floor you're on. In the first 2 major areas, your focus is on getting the knife pieces by solving puzzles in air quotes, and the second part of that area, so the first one, which is Downpour, and you can only find the knife piece in Downpour 2. The third area is focused on defeating Mum to open a passage to an early Mum heart. Both those fights are harder but we'll get to it. The first place along the alt path is Downpour, which may be replaced by Dross when you unlock it, which Dross is a reference to Gish. Remember Gish from like an hour and a half ago? I do. Anyway, this area is generally super fun. All the enemies, aside from a few, feel fair, and they're all just fun. The area looks really damn good, and the music is so freaking good in the regular areas. In Dross and Genna, they aren't extremely good. Genuinely, the alt path music blows away the base games out of the water with how incredibly good it is. Downpour is probably my favorite out of all of them. I generally go the alt path sometimes because of how good the music is. It's also consistently better than Flooded Caves and to me feels easier than Depths in the next location. Yep. The second area are Mines, which is the one I most commonly visit due to the fact I don't use bombs much and it's easier than Depths 1 in my opinion. It has the same quality as Downpour, and the scenario with how you get the knife piece is also really really damn cool. I would show you, but it's spoilery, so nah. It's not like I've shown you essentially everything else in regard to this game. Just ignore that. Or at least I assume I've spoiled it all. I'm recording this all ahead of time. I'm assuming I'm still doing stuff over there. Third and fourth area is pretty fun, despite the fourth not having an extremely good audio track. It definitely has a really eerie mood and a great build up to the final boss of the Alt Path Mother. I think it's a good boss. It is. I love the design though. It is really good. Doesn't have a visible health button though, which is slightly annoying. Overall, the alt path is incredible. I enjoy most of them better than the regular floors, but that may be due to me not going to them as often as the main path. But it's still incredibly fun. Before we get to the best storytelling based ending in the game, I first want to talk about the two new characters. First one is Bethany, who was unlocked by beating It Lives / Mum's Heart on hard mode as Lazarus without losing a life. Bit overcomplicated, but sure. Bethany is okay, in my opinion. I personally just don't find her little sprite gimmick she summons to be very useful. And with how I personally use active items, her gimmicks where blue hearts become charged for items just isn't very useful. She's definitely a character where I can see why people would like her a lot. The second character introduced is Jacob and Esau, where you control two Isaacs at once. It's honestly a character where I don't really feel fair for evaluating them. Most people find them annoying to control because they essentially double your hitbox, which I can imagine makes them incredibly difficult to utilize on later bosses. I don't know, I kind of like them though. I think it's because they're a challenge character, and I have a lot more sympathy for added difficulty with challenge characters, and technically there's a good chance it will actually make the fights quicker due to there being two of them, but also harder because it's a lot less likely you're going to get incredible synergies with one of them. I personally think they're probably not underrated, I'm probably just crazy. So for those curious, here is my Binding of Isaac tier list. No bad characters, which is pretty good for a game with this decently sized roster. I may like some of the more unconventional characters more than the basic ones. My highest ranking basic is due to my friend's obsession, and then the other one after that is gambling. Anyway, finally, the Ascension Path ending thing, in which is honestly probably my favorite thing in all of Isaac. To access it, you need this door to appear in Depths 2, which happens after you defeat Mother. To open it, you need to beat Mom, grab either the Polaroid or the negative, and teleport out of the room. This may sound incredibly luck-based due to the necessary of something to teleport, but on the floor there is a skull with an X on it, which allows you to get the full, which teleports you straight to the entrance. Thank God. I nearly never go to Mega Sane due to inconsistency, so I'm happy that they made this mostly consistent. The door leads you to Genna / Mausoleum 2, where in the boss room you have Dad's Note, which lets you start the ascent. This sequence is phenomenal. If you don't play with sound, turn the sound on for this. It's so incredibly good, I can't describe it with words. You essentially go through a smaller version of each floor you've previously went through, with any of the treasure doors locked still being locked, and if you left a trinket in a treasure room or a boss room, it turns into a red cracked key, which is an item which lets you open a secret door to a hidden room, which is pretty neat. Once you ascend from basement 1, you arrive at home, where you are able to get a full rest, a random chest pull, and a random item, which is initially a red key. After you sleep in your mother's bed, it all goes dark, and when you pass by the TV, Dogma is a pretty dang cool fight. I really love their design, and all their attacks are predictable but somewhat tough. I'm not as big of a fan as phase 2, as I find Dogma's main attack during this phase to be annoying to properly dodge, but I might just be bad. After Dogma, you get the Beast, which is sort of 5 bosses in one and is really fun. You have a 2D side-on perspective, but with flight, which is a really awesome way to make this fight feel different, but still control similarly. You fight a special version of each Horseman of the Apocalypse, and they are really fun, and then play Flappy Bird with the Beast, which aside from this one, laser attack is okay. And you generally have my second favorite ending in the game, which I'm not showing you because I hate you. One last thing with that red key, you get to open a secret door and have 17 new characters to unlock. What? This game over doubles the character roster, which is kind of insane. It introduces what are called tainted characters, which are versions of the characters with one of their traits amplified, or just does something fun with the Bible version of a character. To unlock them, you need to get to home with something that can open red key doors. To consistently get this, you have to drop a trinket in one of the treasure rooms or boss room, as stated earlier, and pick it up during the ascent. I already knew about the tainted characters before starting, and specifically knew of a tainted Jacob looking guy called Tainted Jacob. His gimmick is really fun, fun, and pretty much all of the tainted characters I've unlocked currently are at least okay. I don't have them all because there is a lot, and doing the ascent that many times can get tiring, so I often haven't gotten them. There hasn't been any outright bad characters in my opinion, but a weak one for me is definitely Tainted Apollyon. I personally just find that the Locust can just get annoying early on, and it doesn't really feel satisfying until you've got a lot of Locusts. Overall, get Isaac Repentance. If you're getting Isaac, it looks better and is probably better overall and has one of the best sequences in video games ever. Get it now. Even though I did complain about the Afterbirths, I generally think Repentance redeems them enough to be worth the $80 for everything, because you need the previous DLCs for this one. I should have mentioned that earlier, shouldn't I? Oops. Also, I should quickly mention Repentance Plus, which is technically the 5th expansion, which changes some of the items slightly and adds online. Apparently the online isn't great. It lags when you enter a room, and from the singular game I played, lags incredibly badly if someone has high ping. I uninstalled it because it broke the green machine. Luckily, it only lost a couple of Tainted Eden marks, which are easy to get again. I might have lost a mother mark, but I'm not sure. Don't download it, just use Steam Remote Play if your friends use a controller. That would be much better for online. Hi, I'm back. Now, we've come to the end of our Edmund journey, as there have been nothing new released since 2001. What the hell, Repentance isn't even 4 years old? Oh my god. Edmund is currently finishing off Mugenics and becoming a TikTok star. I don't know about that last one, but Mugenics looks cool. I hope the future bodes well for current Edmund. Now, you might be wondering where the ranking of every game here is going to be.